Alrighty, folks, this is something we do at one rental at a time for extra value. What you see here is an opportunity for students of How to Get Started One Rental at a Time to actually interact with my Rolodex of amazing millionaires and experts in the space. This is something I look forward to doing once a week with different experts. We kicked it off last week with the three amigos. This week we are lucky enough to get Beth Traverso. Beth, how you doing?
I am doing great. Thanks so much for including me in this. It's so cool to see everybody on here. And I love this is my favorite thing to do, just to interact with people
Yeah.
one-on-one here.
Yeah, you've
So
you've
love
been
it.
you've been an amazing contributor one rental at a time. You were gracious enough to come down to the first event in Fresno. You were gracious enough to be a part of one of those 3-hour Sundays to talk about your world. So please know that I appreciate you and the audience appreciates you. And now you're going to
Yeah.
do a 60-minute what's going on in the world. So thank you for being here.
Yeah. And I don't know if everybody knows my background or not, but I've been selling real estate in the greater Seattle area for 25 years, been an investor for about as long. And I think I'm a perfect example or of one way that somebody can do it, just a little bit at a time, one rental at a time, slow and
Exactly.
steady over the years, and how that can grow into something bigger and more exciting as time goes on, and how that path can change over time too. I've had many ups and downs and had to change course lots of times, and my business is doing fantastic now for the sales and the investing, but there's been some times when it wasn't, and so I learned from that and grew out of it. So I've been a lot of different places on this journey, so, and I try to get something from each step that can carry me forward. And if there's things I can share that can help other people and where they are in their journey, then that's just very rewarding for me. And I hope that everybody here can get at least one nugget that they can
Mhm.
use in their lives.
Yeah, I think they're going to get more than one nugget. So, Beth, usually you and I meet at this time and we do 3 separate sessions aiming for about 12 minutes. Here, we're just going to let it rip and let it
Yeah.
roll. Folks, this is your opportunity to ask Beth questions. You have two ways to do that. One, if you're shy, you could put your questions in the chat box. I will do my best to monitor that and we will use that to guide the conversation. Or two, if you are willing to turn on your camera, you could actually raise your hand and you could personally ask Beth a question. So if you would like to do that, please raise your hand. Beth and I will start with our normal talk track, but and then we will look for your questions. My hope is we go for 10 or 15 minutes, Beth and I, on our prepared stuff. And then the last 45 minutes is driven by this audience here. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So Beth, as we always start, what is going on in King County? What is going on in the market, listings, activity?
Right. So
What's going on?
King County, which is the greater Seattle area once again, we're going into our summertime, which is normally a slower season for us. And what I've been seeing this week, because we've mentioned many times in our videos that for me, I see the changes happen week to week. It gets reported on in the media after at least a month has gone by. So it's kind of like rear view mirror stuff. But what we're seeing on the ground right now is a continuation of a different version of our normal summer slowdown. So what I'm seeing is that it's getting a little slower as far as even fewer listings coming on the market. The inventory down, new listings. Always, when I look every week to see how many, I check it every day, but then at the end of the week, I look at it for the whole week, and it's always a lot more pendings than new listings coming on every week. So I'm not seeing that trend changing. What I am seeing is more bidding wars, not the same kind of crazy bidding wars that we had a year ago, because that was something I've never seen before and hope to never see again. I've seen a lot of hot markets because we're in
Yeah.
Seattle. We're used to that. But what happened was just a whole different level of absurdity a year ago. It happened in 2021, and then it happened again in 2022, even more so. This year, everything's different. But because of the lack of inventory, the demand is still there, to the point where my little town of Fall City, Washington, which is barely a little speck on the map, but we're commutable to Amazon and Microsoft, and that's where our industry and income comes from for a lot of people living here. There's nothing on the market. Like I mean, maybe one or two listings now, but there's a lot of very high end ones. Like you talk about the luxury, you know, which for us is like 2.5 million and up, tends to be on that higher echelon. And there's a handful of those, because there always are, because those have longer market time and a smaller buyer pool. It's just always been that way.
Yep.
But that has not changed. If somebody has $3 million to spend, you've got a lot of options. Everybody else has pretty much nothing to choose from right now. So when something does come on the market, it's getting all the attention. So,
Yeah.
and even the ones that maybe like feel like maybe they've been picked over, people are coming back and looking again, turning over the rocks. Like, is there something to be found here? You know, and I like to turn over the rocks too, you know, but so we're still seeing that. But, you know, even those, all of those ones are going off the market too. So, I don't want people to get the idea that you don't still need to price your home appropriately as a seller and market it properly. That still matters. That always matters in every market, my opinion. But for buyers, they're having to be a little more quick and decisive. Have, you know, if you know your market, then you know when something is going to fit your criteria or not within minutes. You know, or like I can usually tell within minutes, and then I need to go out there and see it in person to confirm what I usually already know.
No, it's exactly right. That's the whole beauty of having a buy box and your daily discipline. That's really what we try to teach and talk about here. If you're doing the work, as I call it, and you've done the work for at least 90 days, it may feel like intuition, but it's not. It's learned and earned knowledge. And then that doesn't mean you like write the offer right away, but it does mean you dig deeper and you see if you're missing anything. Yeah, and I'm like you. I can make a decision to go deeper in seconds now.
Yeah.
Because of the daily discipline. So
And the ones that I know that if I was looking for myself as an investor buyer that I wouldn't pursue would be like, oh, here's one that's priced really well and it's shined up in stage. The things that I do to market my sellers listings, you know, it's like those, if it's put out there to get maximum market value, then it's usually not going to be something that's worth pursuing.
Yeah. That's one of the things that's very interesting about this environment is I think we're going to start to see a bifurcation. The pretty properties, we're seeing what happens, bidding wars, all of that. But then there will be some, some ugly ducklings or opportunity. Even some of those are going now, but that's where the opportunity is you've got to do the work, you've got to network. And I think the other thing that Altos research, Mike Simmons has taught me is there are 3 important things, and you hit number 1, and everybody else gets it wrong. That is, what is going on with active listings week to week? Are we getting new inventory? And if the answer is no, we're in our summer slowdown. That's going to be a rough, because you just play that forward. Yeah, it's just not good, right?
And in the Seattle area, we don't get a surge in listings until January, mid-January.
Oh my goodness.
Early February. So we've got that long to, I don't think it's going to change until that, at least until then. You know, this year we never got our surge in January, so it may not even happen then, but I don't expect it's going to happen before then. Just based off my experience and what I'm seeing.
Yeah, and as I've shared with the audience many times, I think you're going to go at least one more year being disappointed, because the inventory is not going to show up. People are not moving. The life events have to stack up for people to move, and heaven forbid rates come down, but they only come down to 6. I'm afraid, Beth, if rates come down from 7 to 6 and stay at 6, that just brings on a whole nother level of buyers, but no supply. You're not going to turn in a 4% mortgage for a 6%. Well, I mean, who's going to do that?
I think it's going to get even more challenging, but I don't want to discourage people. So the successful investors that I've known are people that figure out a way to make it work. They're like, curveballs are flying at you, things are happening, earthquakes are going on, and you're like, what's working right now?
Yeah.
That's what I got to do. Oh, we're not doing that anymore? Okay, we're doing this now.
Exactly.
That's the way they think. They're problem solvers, not people creating problems in their own mind, because that's just excuses to not take action.
Yeah, I'm a big do the work person. It never stops. Doing the work for 20 years in a row is evident of that. Again, there are lots of days where nothing happens. And then there are a couple of days, because you were prepared, that can change your world. So again, folks, remember, you can raise your hand or put a question in the chat box and we will answer it directly. I do not see any as of yet, so I will just let it roll here. Beth, the other thing I don't think a lot of people will remember, let's go back to Beth pre-real estate, or at least pre-real estate agent.
Yeah.
You were working as a, I don't know, hostess, or
I
what
was
were
a
you doing?
banquet waiter.
Mhm.
So that was my last like W-2 job, I guess you would say. I got
Yeah.
tips paid through my check. But yeah, I've never been part of the corporate world, so to speak. But
Okay.
that was in my early 20s. I was working as a banquet waiter, and I I remember hearing back then, I was only 20 at the time, but I remember hearing people, it was in the news back then in Seattle. People were like, I can't believe it costs $100,000 to buy an average house in Seattle now. I'll never be able to buy a house. I'm priced out forever.
Mhm.
And I remember talking to my dad, and I was like, how am I ever going to afford to live in Seattle? Am I going to have to move to another city? What's going on? And he's like, well, he's an entrepreneur also, where, we didn't call him entrepreneurs back then, but he's retired now, but he was a successful custom art glass
Mhm.
artist, and he did a lot of
Okay.
very high-end artwork for a lot of notable people in the Seattle area and beyond. And so he created that out of nothing, and he understood just how to make things and how to think about how to make things work. His whole life is business and working with glass. Like, things are constantly going wrong with the glass, and you got to try to fix it and make the client happy, and
Yeah.
all those things that we do as a real estate agent, then also as an investor too. It's like that problem solving mindset, and just going like, yeah, you can buy a house. And he got me into thinking about, like, here, figure out the financing, do this, do that, and um I did end up buying a house in Seattle in 1995. But I want people to know, it's like, sure, back then you bought it for that low price, but it's like, just know, like, it felt hard back then too, and that has literally never changed between then and now. And I feel old when I think about how many years ago that was, but that really did change my life, because
Yeah.
as somebody who was making, I don't know, 15, 17, $18 an hour, like, that was not um gonna make me wealthy ever, and I didn't go
No.
to college, and I didn't even know how to even go about even starting to do that. So I felt like I didn't really have any way to get forward, move myself forward in life, especially in a high cost of living area. But I was able to buy a house hack, and I rented out one of the rooms to my brother for a while. And then I worked on the basement to get that fixed up into a little studio apartment. And then when I got that somebody renting in there, all of a sudden my cost of living in that house was only about $500. And then once the value went up, because sure enough, values went up. And I remember just being shocked when, like, 2 or 3 years later, that same house I bought for 125 was worth 180. And I was like, that's more money than I could even wrap my head around. Somebody who was like, can I afford to spend this $20 to go out to eat, to, like,
Yeah.
wow, I've got, granted, it was just in equity, but it's like, wow, I can use that equity. And what I did over time was I used equity there to purchase another house, and then we're off to the races, right? So
Yeah.
then you have multiple properties appreciating, and you can work with those to leverage and purchase others. Now, you have to be careful with the leverage, and that's what
Mhm.
you talk about all the time, Mike. Um, but I did it in such a way that made it so, just somebody like me who
Yeah. I
never
see
was one of those people that came from a lot of money or anything like that.
yeah, I see lots of doomers out there, both producing and unfortunately also consuming doom. And when I see people doing that, what I see them doing is taking permission to not do the work. And I can only promise you one thing in this world: if you never take a shot, you're not going to make it.
100%.
And what Beth proved is making 15 bucks an hour, which if you haven't done the math, is 30 grand a year. She found a way to get in. It was a house hack. And now she did have her brother rent a room for a while she worked on the basement. And this is like buying a duplex or a mother-in-law unit or a, granny suite or whatever these things are called. And you take your largest living expense and take it close to zero, which gives you the ability to stack paper. And then the other thing is, I have a shirt that says, I use inflation to get rich. Ask me how. Owning
Yeah.
assets that have fixed rate debt is how. And
Mm-hmm.
again, the more you own, the more it grows, right? When you only have one house, call it 100 grand for easy math, and inflation is up 5%. Well, you made 5 grand. Well, guess what? The bank owned, I don't know, 90 grand, 90% of that with the debt, but you got all the equity.
It's a
It's
beautiful
just,
thing.
it's a beautiful thing. And then you can use it, right? I think a lot of people,
Yeah.
myself included, used equity in the beginning to get more. Others don't. Dion never did. And that's totally okay. But again, he stacked his income, so it became quicker and quicker to buy the next unit. So lots of ways to do things in real estate.
Yeah, and I have to say, there was a time. Oh, and then I paired up with my husband, and I had a house and a rental, a house hack and an investment property, and he had a house hack and an investment property, and then we teamed up, and then it was just like exponential from there. And we picked up a few more houses. Now, this was the time leading up to 2008, where literally anybody could get any kind of mortgage, and being a self-employed person or people, it was easier to get mortgages back then, but it was also easier to get way over your head in toxic debt. We did have a brush with that where, I don't know if you want to go down that rabbit hole right now.
Go ahead. Your
Yeah.
primary home had some bad paper. You took on a bad loan, and you had to struggle through to get that worked out.
And I'm not a dumb person, I like to think. I'm never the smartest person, but I'm not the dumbest either. But but I didn't go into that loan. It was one of those negative amortization loans where basically you have an artificially low payment for, I forget if it was fixed for a year or 2 years, but then it blows up after that and like triples.
Yep.
But the idea was you're only supposed to have it temporarily. And at that time we were working through a short plat on another property, and we're like, oh, well, we'll just sell those. I was pregnant, trying to nest and stuff. And I was like, oh, we got all these properties and stuff. We'll be fine. We can always sell this, sell that. We're subdividing these lots, and we'll have all this money to put down, and we can refi. And then the market blew up, right? Yeah. So the value went down. By the time the short plat was done, we had to fire sale those 2 lots. Our payment went from, I forget what it was, I don't know, $1,500 to like $4,000 or something like that back then. And then we couldn't afford it because my work as a real estate agent was suffering. I didn't have the business then that I do now. I wasn't able to easily pivot. I wasn't doing the right things. Like I said, I try to learn from my past mistakes. My husband's construction business, that kind of blew up too. And then all of a sudden our other properties were upside down. Like, you don't expect that all your backups are all going to flip over at the same time. Nobody really thinks that all their things are going to backfire. Yeah. So it did. And I have to say it was a very stressful time. Very, very stressful. I will never want to ever live through anything like that again. And I'm maybe a little more conservative on my reserves and leverage now because of that. I still do take calculated risks because I do believe that is the best way to grow, especially if we have this low interest fixed rate debt and good and properties that cash flow. But that was extremely stressful. And I remember just felt like I was just being eaten alive by that.
Yeah. Was that the only NAGAM loan you took out happened to be on your primary? Because
only one, of course, it was on my primary, right?
Well, that actually probably saved you. I mean, in hindsight, now we're looking back 2020, you probably don't do a workout on an investment property, but because it was your primary, it probably actually helped you get that done. It wasn't easy. I'm not trying to say it was easy.
Oh no, it took about a year, and thankfully I'm very dogged. I don't know how people that aren't very sophisticated with that type of process can handle that, because it was just totally disorganized. It's way more organized now, but it was just I had record all their conversations because every time they would call, every time I'd call them, it would be a different story, and then one day they just sent me something in the mail saying, hey, you're approved. And we're still in the house today. So, it
has a happy ending, but it wasn't fun.
Yeah. And I do have to say also, it was not fun at all. And the real estate that we own did ultimately get us through that, because once that short plat went through, even though we had to fire sale those lots, it did give cash to get through those few bumpy years. And my kids were like babies at that time too. So it was hard to do a lot. So, but it can be done, when you have to, feet to the fire.
Yeah. It's, yeah. And again, you've learned you're more conservative today, 30-year fixed rate debt only. Maybe you're not stacking as many chips which is okay. So again, folks, you have the opportunity to interact with Beth. You can raise your hand to ask it in person or leave a comment. We will go to the first comment here, basically talking about interest rates. Basically, Beth, what are your thoughts on getting 30-year fixed rate money today? Rates are high. Let's call it 7%, maybe 8%. Let's call it 8% for investors. Or do you think you should get another kind of loan with a lower rate, whether it's an ARM or maybe a 15-year? What are your thoughts on interest rates and doing stuff today because they're so high?
Yeah, so I would not do a 15-year. I heard you mention that in there, because you can pay off any loan in 15 years or whatever amount of years you want to. You do get a little bit lower interest rate, but I prefer to have the flexibility just because of that situation I was just talking about. If something hits the fan and you need to pull back, it's nice to be able to save that money monthly if you can. Now, if somebody has a very predictable job and they feel like they've got great job security and can handle that, or your cash flow from other properties makes you feel very secure that the 15-year, I'm not saying that's not right for anybody. It's just, I wouldn't do it. And then I've never done an adjustable rate other than that I can remember, other than that one on my primary. And I just don't think I would never do that again. So I like to have predictability in payment. So even to the point where it doesn't even necessarily make sense. Cause so here's recently, I just got something in the mail where like our property taxes in my county just spiked last year. And I got some escrow shortfall notice in the mail. Like you probably get those once a year where they calculate and they're like, your payment's going to go up $700 a month on your primary. And I was like, oh no, it isn't. I'm not doing that. So it's like, sure. Okay. Maybe we underpaid in our escrow impound account. I just wrote the check for it, cause like, I just want to just know that my payment is going to be this payment, not $700 more. No,
I like it.
Exactly what we've been paying all along. Could I pay the $700 more? Sure. Does it all work out to be the same in the wash? Yes. Some might say it makes more sense to pay it monthly than to pay it all at once. But for me right now, it's kind of a psychological thing where it's like, nope, keeping it low. The minimum is going to be low. You can always pay more if you want. Although I've struggled with that over the years. Like, should I pay this mortgage off? I thought about that on my primary or others. And I'm like, I just can't get around. Like every single time I come around to, I'd rather have the money just sitting on ice, because it's more, you can do more with it when it's liquid. I'm only paying 3%, 3 to 4% on all my properties, even the investment ones.
Yeah.
I do have a couple lines of credit that some of them have balances on that that would be the thing to pay off. But, I'm conservative, but I know on the spectrum, there's some that are a lot more conservative than me, but I like to go with, because you just don't know. We might think we know what is going to happen in the future, but especially on my primary, I would never want to ever risk that ever again.
Yeah. What I would tell someone to do is, I would ask you, if you're part of one rental at a time, which everybody here is obviously, is always run your numbers with 30-year fixed rate debt. If it's 8%, so be it. If it's 9.5%, so be it. Shoot, if it's 12, so be it. And then what does that tell you? That tells you the maximum number you can pay to get a good or great deal. People inside this course doing the work, we don't just do any deal. We only do the best deals. And a lot of times when the cost of capital is high, that means we're paying less than list price. That's okay. You can do that.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I know that happens as interest rate rises, transactions stop. We are currently at 7%, and you can look at the numbers from Altos Research and Logan from Housing Wire and Lance from Fortune. It's slowing down again. Now, I obviously believe rates are going to go low to 6, which is going to uncork all kinds of craziness. But I would tell you to run the numbers with 30-year fixed rate debt. And then if you choose to do something else, that's on you. But at least you know what the most conservative is. So that's kind of what I think there. What do you think, Beth?
I agree.
All right, let's take a question from Travis. Again, folks, remember you can put comments in. I will do my best to get to them. Or if you want to ask her a question in person, just raise your hand and I will call on you. But this is from Travis. Hi, Beth. Wife and I just started this journey. Should we be working with a realtor or just searching Zillow or similar websites to find a deal? What do you think there, Beth?
I think you should work with a realtor, find the right one, interview a few to find the right fit. Make sure it's someone that really, really knows their craft. There's a lot behind the scenes that you won't know. So I've been what's called a Zillow Premier agent for many years. And I know when people come to me with their questions on Zillow, because they're just clicking, when you click on Zillow, you're getting a random person. It's just luck of the draw who you get. And a lot of times it's now the way they have it set up, it's usually a newer, less experienced team member. Nothing wrong with that. Everybody's going to learn, but so just know that you're not necessarily going to get even somebody that really knows that area super well just by clicking on a button. You get a call center and you get just routed to whoever's turn it is. I think people should be a little more proactive and finding their own agent that's going to represent them, that's going to work on their behalf. Especially if you're new to real estate, you need somebody who's going to tell it like it is. You need somebody who, when I walk onto a property, I'm looking at things and I'll point things out. I say like, this location is good because of this, or maybe it's not so good because of that over there. This area is appreciating because of these things happening. This area is behind because of these other things. Here's this defective siding that I see on this house. This might contain asbestos, just things to be aware of when you're making your offer or thinking about your CapEx and things like that. If you have enough experience and you know the area and the properties well enough, you'll be able to say, well, why is that one priced lower? Right. Is it because it's an anomaly, or maybe they didn't price it right, in which case we need to get in there quick? Or maybe there's a reason why it backs up to something, or any number of it's a flood zone, or whatever the case may be. Those kind of things, if you get the right agent, they're going to be able to guide you and advocate for you, and they will know how this process works. I know that a lot of experienced investors maybe like to go to the listing agent direct. And for some people that makes sense, especially if they're more savvy. But if you're a beginner, especially, just know that listing agent is going to be working for the seller's best interest, not yours. So you can have your own, and it is a normal part of the process for the buyer to have their representation, seller to have theirs, and you work it out together. So if you feel like somebody's not going to be the right fit for you, if you're working with a buyer agent, it doesn't feel like it's working, have a conversation with them. And if you're not able to work it out, then it is okay, I think, to part ways. If you signed a buyer agency agreement, you'll need to talk about that with your agent. But I do believe 100% it makes sense to have a good agent working on your behalf. Now, there's a lot of people out there that do it part-time or don't really know it has to be somebody who really knows their craft. And I say, read reviews. You can find out a lot about a person and their experience online now. It used to be a lot more of a blind process. You can go on Zillow and see how many transactions they've had, et cetera, and read what others have had to say. Google is good for that too. And just word of mouth, talking to others. I think that's probably the most important thing, is talk to others who've had a great experience and see if that person might be a fit for you as well. But there is value in that. And the commission to the buyer's agent is paid out of the seller's net proceeds. Now, we're not allowed to say that seller pays for it, because technically the buyer pays for all of it with their purchase price, but
true.
Both sides feel like they're paying for it, right? But just know that it comes out of the seller's net proceeds. So, and if you have a good agent, they're going to be worth that and a lot more.
Yeah. So let me give my kind of thoughts on this, because again, I want to walk through how I see this question, because I can never assume where somebody is in their journey. So let's assume you just bought the course, How to Get Started One Rental at a Time. You're not even sure what your buy box is, all of that, which was how I went to Fresno, California. So what did I do first? I started networking with other investors and basically asking everybody, including agents, where would you invest? Where would you invest? Okay, great. I found 93703, picked houses, blah, 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 blah. I think the first thing you do if you have the course is you need to do the work yourself. You need to build your spreadsheet. You need to do the tracking. You need to figure out what you know and you don't know. So for me, you have to get knowledgeable first to some level.
Yeah.
Until you get there, you have no idea if you're being fed a line of BS by the agent on the other side, because you're not informed. You haven't done your job yet, in my opinion. So if you just bought the course, I would tell you you've got 60 or 90 days to do the work on your end. But then you need to tell everybody what your buy box is. You need to find an agent who has listings in your buy box, because the good news is if they have one, they probably have multiple. I would think it would be a mistake to click on the Zillow button just because Beth brought it up, get an agent and make them your agent, because you and he or she, you don't know anything yet. You don't even know what you're looking for. That's just a complete and utter waste of time.
Yeah.
So those are some of my just tweaks on that. But and then the last thing that I've learned throughout my sales career, and I've been lucky enough to work with the best of the best across industries that make crazy amount of money. And I don't know if you guys know this, but the best of the best flock together. And Beth is here today as a top 1% national agent. So if I happen to be a new investor who could articulate my buy box in any city or state across the country, I might reach out to Beth and say, Beth, I want to buy in so-and-so city. Who do you happen to know that flocks with you? And you know what? Beth will look at her Rolodex. She will find a referral. She's going to get paid for it. She's going to make sure she takes care of you. And if you don't like who you get, she'll change it. Beth is incented to make sure you are successful. So if I was doing it, I would reach out to Beth, tell Beth my buy box, give Beth a few days to figure out who is the top 1% in that agent. That's what I would do. What do you think, Beth?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I've gotten to know a lot of great people all around the country through I work with Tom Ferry coaching, elite coaching. And so you get to know everyone in that group is top of their game. And so that's just one example, plus others that I've met through other networking events and just other referrals I've given in the past. Like we do have this building of the relationship network. And it is true. And I vet everybody. If I pair someone with someone outside my area, my name is attached to that recommendation. Exactly. And I take that very seriously. So I'm going to do work to vet them the same way I would vet it if it was my own mother purchasing out there, or if I was purchasing, or any of my clients looking to buy out in another area. I'm going to be looking into it with a very close scrutiny. But also I know it's like, for some people, it's just not, they don't click for whatever reason. And that's totally fine. I don't take any of that personally. It's just, okay, we find you a better match. No need to explain. So
this is something that I didn't have back in the beginning, and I wish I did, was this kind of connection. So you're lucky enough to be in the group, How to Get Started One Rental at a Time. You can find Beth in the Facebook group. She's very active. You can just tag her in a post and she will take care of you. So Beth, thank you for doing that. And I've gotten excellent feedback. The 5 or 6 communications I've gotten with people that you've connected, they've all had great things to say. So
love to hear that. That's great.
Here's a question I'm so glad we got. Hi, Beth. Any advice for a brand new agent? I am 22 and just got my license 2 months ago. So let's coach up Vincent, what you would be doing as a brand new 2-month-old agent. What would you tell him?
First of all, welcome, Vincent. I'm glad to have you aboard the agent community. It's it's not an easy road, but it can be super rewarding for those that are willing to give it all they've got. And I would say, first of all, just know that it's going to take a little while, even when you're doing everything right. I've equated it to before to like you're pushing like a big stone, for example, or like a big wheel. Just think of like you're pushing the wheel. It takes a long time to get that moving. But once you get into momentum, it will just start to spin on its own. And so right now you're just working on getting it to move. Yep. And so it's going to, for me, I think it was 6 months until I got my first check. And so you have to have reserves. You have to treat it. You have a wonderful opportunity to start treating this as a business from day one, instead of trying to rebuild it the right way later. That's what I did about 10 or so years into my career. And you can start it now. So it's basically building your systems and processes from go will make it so much easier for you. And I would say it's also, I would recommend starting with a brokerage or a team that can train you up. Because the hardest thing when you're new is finding the clients. And I know I didn't come from money or have a network of a lot of people that were buying houses. So it was very hard for me to get buyers and sellers back when I was new. Teams weren't a thing back then. There's a lot more resources now than there were there then. And you can, so joining a team might be something to do because they have a steady flow of leads that come in. There are opportunities for you to convert those into buyers. And then once you have a buyer or a seller, treat them like gold for life.
Mhm.
If they move to another side of the country, then that's a little harder to keep in touch, but the people that are staying local, people that bought a house through you, treat them like gold for life and make that part of your systems and processes. Track it. So every month we send out, for example, like, okay, here's our June birthdays, and we send out something for every single client whose birthday was in June. And hey, it's been 3 years since your house. One of my clients sent me a pictures like of some box that was like some congratulations. There was a bunch of goodies in there, and he's like, he must have lost the card or something. He's like, I don't know what I'm celebrating, but here, thanks for the thing. Like, oh, it's been 3 years since you've been in your new house. And so we had a whole conversation about that and how awesome that was, that he got the house that he'd been wanting for all those years, and he's been 3 years now. It's just a great way. And the thing is, when they have a question about real estate, more often than not, they're going to call me. And so, and you do that long enough, I get people, like I just met with some clients the other day that I helped them purchase their house in 2017. What is that, 6 years? Now they're thinking about maybe moving. They called me and I went over there and we talked about what their options were. So following up, just thinking long-term on all of it and creating consistent follow-up. The other thing too is, for a new agent, I could talk in a whole hour about this and I won't, but just know that you can reach out to me, Vincent, if you have any questions later. But is that the follow-up is where it gets dropped most of the time. And if you just do what you say you're going to do when you're going to do it, you'll be ahead of 99% of the people out there in general, not just agents, but people out there.
Yeah, what I would tell a brand new agent today is congratulations. If you can get through the next 12 months, you're going to be an amazing agent. We're going to see, in Realtor, I think, reported 60,000 agents left the business in Q1, something like that. There's going to be a lot of quitters. There are going to be a lot of agents that got lazy or rewarded for bad process and procedures in 2020 and 2021. And they're going to go broke. They're going to go become baristas or something.
Yeah.
Getting started today is actually a blessing because it's hard. Hard in the beginning is a blessing because it proves that you can get through it. And I've been doing this 23 years now. This is the hardest market I've ever seen to be an agent in because it's hard to buy and it's hard to get listings. It just sucks. Who likes to like for 20 years, we averaged 6 million transactions. Even in the Great Recession with short sales and foreclosures, we still did 6 million transactions. Well, damn it, Vincent, you're starting in a year, we're going to do 4. But that's great news because
That's
we will
4
eventually
million transactions. All
Yeah.
you need is just your share. Get it.
And if you can build the systems and processes, and oh, by the way, your cost structure has to be nothing today. So again, congratulations. Know that it's going to be hard, but welcome it. Because when you get to the other side of hard, the next 22 years are going to be easy. And then the other thing, Beth, I want to go back to you because I know your story. You had to rebuild, right? There was a time where the talk track was you need to have the biggest team out there. You need to do this. You need to do that. That obviously comes with overhead. You've kind of went down that road at least a little bit and then reset. Talk about changing and pivoting and
I
rebuilding.
did. Yeah. So there was a time, I think this was around 2019. We had a little bit of a blip in the market in 2019 where all of a sudden it shifted away from sellers and the market went down basically for a little while in 2019. It feels like ancient history now. People have forgotten about that because everything that happened since then, but it happened. And I remember at that time I was working on building a bigger and bigger team. At that time, I was more like online lead based, where I'll just say it was Zillow. And I still have a lot of respect for Zillow. I'm friends with a lot of them there, but I was spending a huge amount every month to keep these leads coming in to feed these buyer agents. And the trend was for mega teams. But then I realized when the market went and everything just stopped, it hit the brakes. And I think it was summer of 2019. And I go, oh my gosh, it's costing me. It was $23,000 a month just for Zillow, not to mention everything else. And when that stopped, guess who has to keep paying the bills?
Yep.
Me. And then I started looking at my profit and loss and everything. And then I realized that I was way more profitable with a small, highly productive team than I was with a larger team. I never got that big. I put the brakes on it before it went really big. And there's agents out there who it's just a math equation, right? Like they're very good at running mega teams. And maybe if they have a 10 to 15% profit margin, that's plenty for them, if they're doing hundreds of millions of dollars in volume. good for them. I'm not saying it doesn't work for some people, but for me, I just know it was going the wrong direction as far as stress and the sleep at night test. I was failing the sleep at night test when I was thinking about the months of life or whatever, as Brian Lebo called it. You know, it's just
The
like,
mole, month
and
of
I
life.
never thought of it as that before, but I did the math and I'm just like, this is heading in a direction that is going someplace bad. And I didn't work this hard to just have it go there, you know? So I was like, oh, that's it. You know, I was getting ready to hire sales managers and to manage the people, because when you got a team, you got to coach those people. And some people love that, but I'm the kind of person that I like to do different things. And so I was going to have to hire somebody, and that was going to cost 6 figures plus a year. And then you got to, you know, make sure that those people that are working under you are selling enough, because when you're sending them a Zillow lead that costs $300 to $500 a call, for example, you know, it's very expensive, you know, and they're not able to convert it, then it's just like, you might as well just light that money on fire. So what I would say is profit first. Like, you got to always think about the profit first, and that's far more important than ego or anything like that. And I decided that I didn't need whatever accolades, and I wanted it to be profitable, and I still have a sizable overhead. One thing I want to say is, like, there is a cost to doing business. If you want to be, some people don't want to grow that big in their real estate business. They just want to do a few here and there, and that's fine. You can do that with very minimal overhead. But if you want to start leveraging other people's time, then that's going to cost money. So building out, so I have my 2 admin that are on salary, and then I've got my 2 agents under me, and then I have all my marketing expenses, and which are everything is systematized. So, like, marketing goes out every month, whether I'm thinking about it or not. Everything happens. There's a cost to that. So, but I make sure to keep an eye on it to make sure that cost is not out of whack, and make sure my profit margin is enough. But just know that, like, if I'm getting $10,000, it's just like if you hired a roofing company or some other company. It's not like they get 100% of the money you pay them, the same as I don't either, you know. But you got to make sure that there's enough there that it's going to be achieving your goals, business and personal. So yeah. Did that answer your question? I think
it
so.
did. It did. You did a
Okay.
great job. So we got a question from Michelle. I'm going to tell Michelle that she should probably reach out to you directly, because she has a house that she's looking at selling at the end of the year in Bellevue. So obviously there's probably lots of questions you would want to know about that, location, size, you know, all of that. But I will ask a generic question. So the rest. So I don't know. Does Bellevue in King County?
Yes, it is. It's right at the heart of the east side. Okay. So there's a big lake, Lake Washington, Seattle on the west side, and Bellevue's on the east side, and they both have skyscrapers. And Bellevue is a fantastic place to own real estate or to sell if your plans have changed. So
So I'll let her reach out on that. But I want to talk about.
Her name is familiar. I wonder, were you connected with Dion? Maybe. I'm wondering. I maybe could be wrong about that, but Michelle, let's connect. And I think we may have almost connected before. But anyway, I'm on it. Yes. Okay. I saw your yes there. Thank you, Michelle. Let's connect about Bellevue.
Yeah. So
Bellevue's doing great right now, by the way. It went cold for a little bit. Now it's back up.
So let's remind folks what I call it King County. We'll call it Bellevue. Looks like at the end of the year, because I think she's saying October, November. Generally speaking, that's a pretty slow period. And I would argue that's a pretty slow period, generally speaking, for the country. But I think you told me last October, November, that it's really slow in King County that time of year. Do I remember that right? Or am I confused?
Well, sometimes we get a little bit of a bump after everyone's back in school. Okay. So the market, especially the residential, you are not wrong, but we do get a little bit of bump after school, the school year starts again. It's very school year centric. And I see you're under a rental contract till February 24th. That's actually perfect timing, because that's prime time for spring in Bellevue. I do know that Bellevue is getting multiple offers again right now. Last summer when rates spiked, it just hit a wall and stopped. People were doing price reductions at that time. And Bellevue is like the epicenter. There's 2 epicenters in King County, Seattle and Bellevue. And Bellevue is that epicenter, a highly, highly desirable area. So yeah. So let's take Michelle's question and kind of piece it apart for the rest of the audience. So let's assume you have a rental
that's coming due in February, meaning if the lease is up and the tenant can, vacate. When do you list that? Right. It looks like here thoughts maybe listing in October, November, probably put in the notes, tenant gets it until February, whatever. Or would you advise, if this is one of your clients, Beth, you know what, let's get the tenant out, let's polish it up a little bit, spend the 5 or 10 grand, and then list it in March. And again, remember, I think what you told me about King County is January is when the inventory hits. So maybe waiting to March is the wrong idea. I don't know. Maybe you should list early. Maybe you list now and say, hey, you can't occupy it till March. I don't know. What if this is one of your clients, what are kind of some questions you would at least ask?
Right. So generally speaking, without knowing all the details, I would advise, I've never had it be the best outcome when a tenant is in the property when it's on the market, especially in an area like Bellevue, where people are very, they want it move in ready, period.
Yep.
End of story. They don't want to mess with even replacing carpet.
Yes.
And I've done it before. I've tried to sell properties myself with a tenant in there, and I even tried to give them reduced rent in exchange for keeping the place clean and being accessible. Guess what? It never worked.
Nope.
And it always looked terrible, and they were always uncooperative or like there during showings. Tenants have nothing to gain typically from a house being on the market and a lot to lose.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason to do that would be if you had no other choice. You will net far higher by having it vacant and cleaned up as needed, staged. That's going to get you the most by a long shot.
Let me ask a different question, or slightly different question. If you had to pick the best month to list a house, and by best month meaning as the seller you get the highest price, what month is that in the year?
February.
All right. So again, if that's the answer, what I would do, and again, I know nothing about King County, nothing about Bellevue, is I would do cash for keys. I would give the tenants 10 grand, some number to leave in December, so that I get January to polish it up. And if you tell me the best month to maximize my rent is February, I would do everything humanly possible, including cutting a 5-figure check to get the tenants out early so that I can clean in January, list February 1st. What do you think of that crazy idea?
Yeah, I think that could be worth it. I don't think that March is a bad month, that being said, but you do have to, I would give it probably 30 days. I mean, could we whip it into shape in a week? Sometimes we can, but a lot of times when tenants move out, there's some work to be done. It's going to take minimum a couple of weeks typically just to do the paint, carpet, fixing things that are broken, landscaping, things like that, staging, photography, get it on the market.
And then it gets slow in King County June, right?
June. Yeah.
So you have that little window, January to May.
Yeah.
Could you wait, let the tenant get out on their own at the end of February? Sure. I would listen to an expert in the area and know that, when's the best month. And I would try, and that's not even a guarantee, because the tenants could always say, F you, I'm staying because of the lease. But I would certainly try. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, folks, remember, you can ask Beth questions. We probably have time for one more question, because again, I have a hard stop at 11. Again, you get access to these because you are a part of One Rental at a Time. Oh, I don't see any other questions, which is cool. So Beth, why don't you kind of bring us home? What's going on in the market today? How do people get a hold of you? And thank you again for being here. This has been a lot of fun.
So this is a blast for me. And I honestly say, if anybody's got any question ever, just reach out to me. I'm an open book. So I'll let you know what's working and what I've seen that isn't working, and what I've done that was good and what I've done that was a miss, my hits and misses. So, so I would say, yeah, if anyone, ever, it's an open invitation. And I love that about this group. And I've been really enjoying getting to know a lot of the folks in this community. What a great community it is. So it's just a bunch of people just working together to help each other and looking for everyone to just move forward in their, goals. So, yeah, but as far as what's going on, I think as far as the market looking forward, I don't see things getting easier for buyers going forward. I'm sorry to say it. And I'm not saying that just because I'm an agent. I call it like it is, where I see up, down, indifferent, and I'm going to do my thing regardless. So I just know that I have nothing personally invested in these predictions. And they're just predictions. Could I be wrong? Yes. But, I've seen enough trends over time where you can just start to see the writing on the wall and you go, oh, I spot that. And I know what that means. And what I'm seeing right now, I think the inventory is going to continue to dwindle. I think rates are going to start to come down. I don't think it's going to crash rates. I don't think rates are going to crash. I think they're going to slowly come down or maybe go up a little bit and then down. But I think overall, we're probably going to be down. And I think in the Seattle area, we're going to see positive year-over-year numbers coming up in the next month or two in our MLS data, because we're finally past that bubble we had early 2022. So our year-on-year is going to be looking at times when rates spiked last summer and everything hit a wall. So I'm not seeing it's getting any easier. But again, I don't want anyone to feel discouraged by that, because just know that as somebody who's an old timer now, it's like, it's never easy, but you should welcome that, because most people quit when it's not easy. And the people that don't quit are the ones that succeed over time. And once you get a taste of that, like you do something and it works and you're making progress, it gets addictive after a while, where it really is like a rush to see like, oh, I can do this and I can figure out ways. Oh, lending is harder now. Maybe I go to this other non-QM lender or other types of, you find other resources, private lending, seller financing, things like, there's so many resources now that I wish I had back in the day. And Mike, you bring them to the, all people got to do is just hit play and enjoy these experts on your channel. I listen to it when I'm driving around. I spend a lot of time driving around. And I listen to it as I'm going about my day, because I want to get these nuggets from people that know about things that I want to know about. So just being around that, be sure to, my advice also is just be sure that you are a careful gatekeeper of what you allow into your headspace. So even like even the news, I don't listen to anymore. I definitely don't listen to any of those doom and gloom real estate channels. I don't even know who they are anymore, because I literally blocked them from my feed. I don't want to hear that nonsense.
Yeah.
Not because I don't think real estate can go down. Sure, it's going to. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up again. We find ways to make it work. All I know is for me, it's been a life changer, not just for my life, but my kids' lives have been forever changed. And maybe their kids' lives beyond that. And maybe, and my goal now is I'm thinking, I want to find ways I can help the community and around me, where I'm able to give to charity and help make a difference for other people that I never could have done if I never took a chance in real estate. So for me is, if I can share that with people to know, okay, it's going to be hard, but that doesn't mean that it can't be done or you shouldn't do it. Take the time to learn from those that are making it work. And I do the same thing too. I love to surround myself from people who are somebody that I can learn from. It's never ending. My journey is far from over.
There you go. Well, Beth, thank you very much for being here, folks. Do me a favor, if you are watching this, let me know which expert we should try to schedule next week for 1 hour of Q&A. Again, folks, if you want to be a part of this, you must be a part of How to Get Started One Rental at a Time, be in the Facebook group, Teachable, all of that. Thank you, everyone. Take care of yourself. Beth, thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.